Russia launched nearly 500 drones and missiles at Ukraine overnight in what was Moscow's largest bombardment since the start of the war.
A referendum in Italy on easing access to citizenship and boosting worker protection failed due to low turnout.
Ukraine's Air Force says Russia launched 479 drones at Ukraine overnight in what was the biggest bombardment of the war so far. Around 20 missiles were also fired, targeting mainly central and western areas of the country. Ukraine reportedly neutralized 277 drones and 19 missiles in mid-flight, claiming that only 10 drones or missiles hit their target. Officials said one person was injured. A recent escalation in aerial attacks has coincided with a renewed Russian battlefield push on eastern and northeastern parts of the front line. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said late on Sunday that in some of those areas, quote, "the situation is very difficult," but provided no details. So far, 2 recent rounds of direct peace talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations in Istanbul have yielded no significant breakthroughs.
A referendum in Italy on easing access to citizenship and boosting worker protection failed due to low turnout. To be valid, the vote required participation from at least 50% plus one of eligible voters. However, Italian authorities said slightly less than 30% of eligible voters had cast their ballots at the end of 2 days of voting. One ballot question asked voters whether the residency requirement for Italian citizenship should be cut from 10 to 5 years. The remaining 4 questions addressed recent reforms on labour rights and protections. The proposals came from Italy's unions and left-wing opposition parties. But the ruling coalition opposed the measures, with some politicians urging voters to stay away and sink the turnout below the quorum threshold. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni went to the polling station but deliberately left without voting.
Donald Trump's travel ban on 12 countries went into effect on Monday. The United States president banned travel to the U.S. by citizens of 12 countries and restricted access for those from 7 others. He had announced the ban last week, citing security concerns. The ban comes as part of Trump's escalating crackdown on immigration that has often pushed the limits of executive power and clashed with federal judges trying to restrain him. Groups that provide aid and resettlement help to refugees denounce the ban. They say the policy is not about national security, but instead sows division. In his first term in 2017, Trump had similarly issued an executive order banning travel to the U.S. by citizens of 7 predominantly Muslim countries.
At least 27 people were arrested in downtown Los Angeles as thousands took to the streets to protest US President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown and his deployment of National Guard troops. Protesters shut down a major freeway and set self-driving cars on fire, prompting law enforcement to respond with tear gas, rubber bullets and flashbang grenades. This was the 3rd and most intense day of demonstrations in Southern California, sparked by Trump's immigration crackdown and the arrival of roughly 300 National Guard troops. The troops were deployed to guard federal buildings, including a detention center that became the focal point of the protests. California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, urged Trump to withdraw the troops, calling the move a serious breach of state sovereignty. It marked the first time in decades that National Guard troops were deployed to a state without the governor's request.
Moving in on horseback, firing rubber.
An Australian television journalist was hit in the leg by a non-lethal round while reporting live during the protests.
You just shut the
Demonstrations began Friday after reports emerged that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, agents were conducting raids across predominantly Hispanic neighbourhoods. Trump has escalated immigration raids during his second term, directing ICE to detain up to 3,000 people per day.
Iran claims to have obtained information on Israel's nuclear program. The country's intelligence minister Esmail Khatib said the documents were retrieved through infiltration and access to sources, but did not provide any evidence.
اسناد کامل هسته‌ای به دست اومده و منتقل شده و اسناد دیگری در رابطه با ارتباط با آمریکا، اروپا، کشورهای دیگه و اسناد اطلاعاتی که موجب قدرتمندی آفندی کشور میشه در اینا هست. اسناد ان شاءالله به زودی منتشر میکنه.
The announcement comes days before the UN's nuclear watchdog prepares to meet. Iran is expected to face renewed diplomatic pressure over its failure to clarify long-standing questions about its nuclear activity.
Israeli forces stopped a Gaza-bound aid ship early Monday, briefly detaining the passengers, including Greta Thunberg and other activists. The interception of the Madlin ship came as it entered Palestinian territory, where a long-standing blockade has been tightened by Israel during the war with Hamas. The Israeli Foreign Ministry in social media posts gave updates on the situation, saying the passengers of the ship, which it describes as a selfie yacht of celebrities, were safe and unharmed. The Foreign Ministry said the activists were being taken to Israel and expected to then return to their home countries. Organized by the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, the voyage had set out to protest Israel's ongoing military campaign in the Gaza Strip, currently one of the world's deadliest wars. Thunberg, a climate campaigner, was among the 12 activists aboard the Madlin, which set sail from Sicily a week ago. After a 2.5-month total blockade aimed at pressuring Hamas, Israel started allowing some basic aid into Gaza last month, but humanitarian workers have warned of famine unless the blockade is lifted.
China's exports to the United States fell 34.5% in May from a year earlier, new customs data show, hours ahead of another round of trade talks between the two countries in London. China's total exports rose 4.8% last month, a slightly slower year-on-year increase. Exports to Southeast Asia and Europe remained robust, growing 14.8% and 12%. Exports will likely rebound somewhat in June thanks to a 90-day suspension of most of the tariffs China and the U.S. imposed on each other in their escalating trade war. At the same time, China's own domestic markets are suffering, with consumer prices falling 0.1% in May amid sluggish demand. The next round of negotiations follows a phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, but it's unclear if that exchange will lead to any significant progress during the talks this week. For the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic, Santorini, one of the most popular Greek islands, is experiencing a decline in tourist traffic. Earthquake activity on the island earlier this year deterred many international visitors from choosing it for their summer holidays. In recent weeks, arrivals have been increasing, but the island is far from the highs of previous years.
Been to Santorini years ago and always wanted to come back. And here we are, we finally made it back.
Did you hear about the earthquakes earlier this year?
We did. They happened, they were over, and we're still coming. It's a beautiful place to come. Earthquakes can't stop you from coming to this beautiful city.
Santorini is on our bucket list, somewhere everyone has to go, and it's fabulous. Really good, loving it. Yep. Have you heard anything about earthquakes in the island? Yes, our tour guide told us that there have been earthquakes in the island, and you had lots in February, but it's all good now. Perfectly safe.
Santorini's been really, really fun. We've only been here a day, but we woke up really, really early and just had a look at all the shops, the cafes, the restaurants. The view is just amazing from where we're staying. Was it Cliffside Suites? Really nice, and everyone's just really, really friendly. It's definitely a culture shock from the UK.
The island's hotels are offering discounts on room rates to attract last-minute tourists. At the same time, the cost of living crisis affecting Europe and the United States is also leaving its imprint on Santorini.
Τώρα είναι, δηλαδή βλέπεις είναι ένα ζευγάρι, μία πίτα γύρο, μία κοκακόλα με τα δύο καλαμάκια μέσα να πίνουν και τα δύο μαζί. Αυτό δεν έχει ξαναγίνει.
Φέτος οι επισκέπτες είναι πιο συγκρατημένοι στα έξοδά τους και αυτό φαίνεται όχι μόνο στις κρατήσεις των ξενοδοχείων αλλά και στα γραφικά σοκάκια των ελληνικών νησιών. Όπως λένε οι ιδιοκτήτες των καταστημάτων, οι τουρίστες φέτος ξοδεύουν σημαντικά λιγότερα σε σχέση με προηγούμενα χρόνια, τόσο για εστίαση όσο και για αγορές αναμνηστικών ειδών. Από τη Σαντορίνη για το Euronews, η Μέλα του Χτίδου.
Four Japanese soldiers sustained non-life-threatening injuries following an explosion at a U.S. military base on the southern island of Okinawa. The soldiers were working at a storage site for unexploded ordnance, mostly from wartime and found on the island, local officials said. The Self-Defense Forces Joint Staff said one of the devices suddenly exploded when the soldiers were inspecting it at the facility. The accident was believed to be the first ever since the 1974 launch of the Japanese Army's Unexploded Ordnance Disposal Unit. There are hundreds of tons of unexploded wartime bombs that remain buried around Japan, many of them dropped by the U.S. military during World War II. Many of them are still found on Okinawa, where nearly 2,000 tons of unexploded U.S. bombs are believed to remain.